Hello, hope you're all well. Welcome to another one of these. I'm really getting to the end of this now. I'm on this penultimate shot, and this is a shot where all the birds that are badly drawn become the quote-unquote well-drawn birds. I say that as I've just noticed that one of his feathers are missing, so I'm just going to quickly salvage that. Oh, it seems to have been locked. I wonder if that's part of this. Okay. If you have a problem like that and it's sort of you have something on one of these master controllers that accidentally is incorporated or not incorporated, you can edit it. We're going straight in here. You can edit it in post rather than having to make the whole thing again. So what I'm going to do is just take note of what that's called, Wing 02, and where it's located, which is in B Wing. And then I'm going to go to this. I'm going to select it like that and just select the magnifying glass there. And then if I go into the controls properties and just look at the UI data, it should have everything that's included. And I don't want to include Wing 2. So what I'm going to do is just select it so it's visible. I'm just going to get rid of, so I don't have to keep going in and reselecting it in the node view after I've done all this. Anyway, I'm going to select this little area and just hit delete. If you want to add something, what you do is you sort of copy a certain amount of this, and then, you know what I mean? You're just basically typing in the path. So because this is more or less at the root, I just copy everything else. So I copy this little sort of tilde slash, and then wherever the item is inside the puppets group, and then the name, and then you have to always put quotes around it. And if it's not at the very end of this little list, a little comma, so that way it understands that there's another thing coming. Anyway, I'm just going to get rid of that line. Close, and then to sort of make it work again, because it's still not working yet, I've got to, while that's selected, the master controller selected, I hit show hide controls and then hit it again, and it reloads it. And now I've got what I actually wanted, which is this sort of thing to happen. Now, it sort of illustrates actually why I've got only one bird here. There should be three. If we look at the shot so far, what it is there are lots of badly drawn birds, and they're sort of on the verge of exploding into being the lovely birds that they actually are going to be. And I've done that animation to start with before I sort of made this video, and then just as they come into being to be the pretty birds, they disappear, they sort of explode. I might do little sort of badly drawn feathers flying off or something, I'm not sure. But there's going to be a lot of visual effects here that aren't here yet, you know, lots of flashing and stuff. Anyway, so if you, as you can see, the middle bird disappears, and I've done all that animation already, and then another bird appears in its place, and I've got to kind of give the impression that all that pent-up energy is suddenly go pop pop, and you know, you get this lovely bird, and then who will fly off in the shot. I haven't got a very long period of time, but that's the shot. So he starts there. There's no his frames are exposed as soon as the other bird disappears, and I'm just gonna, because I don't want all these visible, I'm gonna hide that. The reason I'm doing it one at a time is because there may be funny little things. I've never used this puppet before, totally new, and I think out of all the puppets I've made on this production, he's the slickest. However, he may have some little problems I haven't yet discovered, so I don't want to repeat that for all the other characters that I'm gonna create, because you know what I mean. So what I want to do is animate him once, and then when I'm happy, put that finished animation in repeated here, and then maybe make some variations, offset the timing, things like that. So that's the reason why I'm doing him now, and just once, one character at a time, not all of them at the same time. One of the advantages of digital animation over stop motion. Can't do that in stop motion. If you have, there's an interesting thing. If you have a character that breaks halfway through the shot in stop motion, you know, you just got to get on with it. That is normal activity for any production, doesn't matter how fancy, puppets break. And you have to be skilled enough to know how to deal with that. If an arm is on the way out, you have to perhaps let the sort of puppet makers know that that's going to happen, just so that they've got a replacement arm ready to go, and you can sort of pop the old one out and put a new one in. If you feel that the whole structure of the character is going to die, then you can sort of either work with, I mean, it depends on how fancy the production is. If it was something like Bob the Builder or something, you know, for kids, then, you know, you've got to get the stuff done quickly. You've got to get either to the end of the shot, or you've got to figure out a movement that can easily replace the puppet, or, you know, you can, there are all sorts of ways around it, but you have to integrate that into your thought process for the whole shot. That's the point. And if it was something really fancy, you sometimes use lots of what's known as a frame gauge, lots of those, to make sure that when you take the puppet out for repair and then replace it with the repaired puppet or a brand new puppet, it's in as close to the original position as possible. A frame gauge is essentially a piece of wood or heavy metal or something with a wire attached to it to reference a particular place in space, you see. So that's what that's for. Anyway, in this case, you know, I don't have any of those worries, but I will occasionally, like I've had in the past with like the Grey Lady, moments where the arm decides to not behave as it should, and I've had to make an entirely new pathway for a completely different type of arm to work for the shots that I'm working on. You know, it's not unheard of to modify a puppet as you go. It's not great, you try and avoid that, and the more scenarios that your character goes through, the more prepared you are. You say, oh, I've got a puppet that can do that, or I've got this replacement part, or whatever. It's just normal. So anyway, hopefully I won't have that. The only thing that might be a problem, and I thought I'd give this a try, I don't usually use this thing, but I've got a spring. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here we are, spring on the tie, dynamic spring, to potentially save me work whenever his head moves, around, his body moves around like that. The tie is supposed to be able to sort of swing in the opposite direction. How well this will work for the sort of animation that I'm going to do, I don't know, but I thought I'd give it a try. Worst case scenario, I just get rid of this section and I just replace the tie with, you know, what they call it, a deformer in place, or maybe a constraint or whatever, so that I can hand animate it. I'm not optimistic, because every time I've used a spring in the past, it always misbehaves. I don't know anybody that's really liked them. The only thing it's really good for, really, is background characters or sort of automations where, you know, a palm tree will be flapping about or something. But for main characters, it tends to be annoying. But we'll see. We shall see today whether or not I've cracked something about this, or whether it still is something that I don't tend to use. Anyway. Right, so here we have him, and I think at least for the first few frames I will need to put in just the middle bird, just to get a sense of energy transfer from one entity to another, so I can sort of see how that will translate. Now, I don't want him facing front, stylized as a character he may be. What I will do, I don't normally do this, but what I will do, just to make sure that I've got a character that's not completely tied up in knots, so to speak, I'm just going to copy this frame that I know is good and everything's relaxed and in the right place. I'm just going to put it at the end. And this is a common practice where you take a frame that you like, put it somewhere in the animation where you don't care, and then you delete at the end or something, just so that you've got it ready to bung back in again later if you get really caught up and the character's all twisted up and on itself. Anyway, here he is. Now, the first position I want him to go to is sort of like that, with his face over that side, I think. So I'm just going to move him over there. And I'm going to move his eyes there. Now remember, this is, I love that. That always worked out really well whenever I was demonstrating that on Instagram. I'm just going to do a bit of that. So I want to give the impression that he sort of popped out. Pop. Now I may need to move him to a different location. And I think we need to rotate it a little bit. Pop. And I think, I'm not sure whether I want him to look at the camera, but I'll do that for now. Now the head, the hat, I rotate to get a different position, and that affects, you know, it's able to move around like that. But pop. Now his wings automatically do this, and the slider does that rotation for me. And these are percentages of that value. They're all tied together, you see. So that will happen whatever I do. And as far as I remember, I've got that, and they all copy whatever movement I've done there. Now, obviously, you know, if this was a series or something, I would like to have an alternate wing that didn't do that, so that you've got the option of total control if you want. But for this, again, he's hardly ever on. He's mostly flapping. So I want to make my life easier, and that's what I've done. Now, I think that's where I want that tie. Again, that spring, we shall see if that benefits my life in some way. And I think, I can't remember what this does. Oh, I see, that tilts his body on a deformer, I think. Let's just have a look at that. It does something. It's probably, so clearly these are weighted deformers I've got here, and I must have got a master peg to be able to move those, to rotate them. So these two don't move, but the entire upper part moves. So that must have been what I did. It's been such a long time, I cannot remember. There we go. Right. So I think that's nice. Now, one thing I do need to do, which I haven't got, is get a open mouth. I haven't got one at all. So I've got to draw one in. Now, this is something that you have to do with, if you've got mouth not just mouth positions, but hand positions. Some people like to create all the mouth positions before they start and do all the hands. I do and I don't do that. Certainly not for this. There's no point. I don't know what I'm going to need until I need it. So, you know, it's such a short thing. If I was doing a piece of animation where there was a lot of talking, then yes, obviously I need every mouth position that I can think of, at least for the phonetics. But, you know, I really didn't know what I was going to be doing with this, and I instinctively want to open that mouth. So, just going to go into the drawing level, duplicate the drawing. So now I'm on drawing 2, and I'm just going to try and create. Now, I don't know if sometimes this is useful, this light bulb thing, because you can kind of see how the drawings are without any deformations or constraints at all. So you get a kind of idea of how things were when they're raw, and luckily they are kind of in the right place. So it gives me an idea of how this is going to look, but it doesn't always work, and you see everything. So you know, it's good and it's not good at the same time. Now then, let's just see what that looks like. Okay. So, okay. What I'm trying to do is use the existing stuff to get what I want. Now the drawing, just draw a little line, get rid of all of the unnecessary clutter there, and then just magnetize that, add another point, magnetize that, like that. I think it's important when you're animating these bits to acknowledge that this is a break in the flow, that is what is happening here. So don't sweat it, don't get carried away and say, oh god, I should be animating. No, just take your time. This is sculpting time. When I've worked at Aardman, and you needed a particular body part, usually a mouth, but sometimes an arm or a leg or something. Of course, it's all plasticine, and you would have to sit at your own personal table while you're animating, and you would sculpt a brand new thing with your lamp. You'd listen to a piece of music, podcast, or whatever it might be, and you would get on with that. That's part of what you have to do. So, in the middle of animating, you would take a break, cup of tea, and you would just sculpt what you needed. And that takes time, especially to the standards that Aardman want. You want clean plastic, you've got to keep cleaning it all the time with wet wipes and things like that. Use a bit of petroleum jelly or something sometimes, different colours of plasticine. It does take time to get a good result. Now, let's see. There you go, that's not bad. I would like to colour that a little bit differently, so I'm just going to go into the palette. And where are we? An awful lot of extra palettes here. I'm just going to use this wonderful script. I can't remember his name. It's terrible. Anyway, it's a wonderful script. If anybody's got my guide, go to the back and there's oh God, what's his name? It's dreadful, isn't it? Awful. I've forgotten his name. He's an Asian man, and his name is not something that I'm used to saying. That's the reason why it's not on my mind. I'm terrible with names anyway. But anyway, what's it called? Raindrop. His website's called Raindrop something or other. Anyway, if you look at my guide, it has it at the end. And this is one of his wonderful scripts that basically gets rid of all the unnecessary palettes in your scene. And I've been using that an awful lot lately because I just think it's flipping fantastic. It's awful. I really don't like forgetting names, but unfortunately I do it all the time. I even forget my own sometimes. For some reason, my brain simply doesn't think it's that important. I'm terribly sorry. All who are involved in that. It really isn't a disrespect thing. My brain just doesn't seem to think it's worth keeping anything like that. And I've tried, it doesn't seem to care. Anyway, beak shade. I remember what matters, people's birthdays and actually looking people up and talking to them, but I don't, their names. For some reason, my brain says, no, that's not that important. Which is incredibly embarrassing and frustrating. Anyway, there we go. That's my frailties. Right, I've managed to make a little sort of interior mouth colour there. Now, because I've now got an open mouth, I can create, let's just select that. Yeah, I can create variations on that because I can just open the mouth more and stuff. So what I'm going to do is just create another one, hitting duplicate drawing, and I'm just going to open the mouth a bit more, like that. There we go. I think there's a little bit of ugliness going on there. There's too many points, you see. I don't usually like creating things that are this untidy. If I was doing this properly, well, I don't need that for a start. And I don't need... What you're trying to do always is to try and minimise the amount of points you have, you see. There we go, like that, and then like that, and then get rid of you, and then smooth you out. There we are. I'm trying to learn Nomad at the moment, which is a iPad. I might as well do it there as well. An iPad 3D modelling software. Okay, so there and there. Okay, anybody who's used to doing that kind of thing and vector, I mean, they have a similar frontier, vector work and 3D modeling. With 3D modeling, of course, you've got a lot more complexity because you're dealing with 3 dimensions rather than 2, which is a barrel of fun. And I've forgotten all the little things you have to do, like sort of make objects in order to cut objects and all that sort of stuff. So that's on my mind at the moment as well. It's Toon Boom related, but I'm having to sort of learn that a bit as well, which is fun. Some good tutorials online for that, which I've been using, and I'm researching Skillshare. So I'm using that to learn bits of Nomad, but I'm also using it to try and sort of sniff out what it's like, and for my own tutorials, future tutorials. Suffice to say that if and when I do put stuff on Skillshare, it will not be the sort of thing that I'm putting on YouTube. It's going to be a lot nicer than that. You know, more fun. Well, not that this isn't fun, but it's pretty much fly on the wall stuff, and I can't put stuff like that on Skillshare. I've got to do something more considered, because you know, it's a special event. Right, okay. Pop. Now I think what I might do as well, I like that. What I'm going to do is, because this isn't a very extreme frame, but I like it, and it's not this boring sort of first frame, what I'm going to do is make a full frame of that, copy it, and I'm just going to paste it there so it's in reserve, because this frame I want very exaggerated and sort of over here, you know, like a real bang of movement. If you look at the transformations that happen in Beauty and the Beast, where all the characters at the end go from being human to being, go from being inanimate objects to being humans. Not the Beast, he's a different kettle of fish for the most part, but the others go swishy, whishy, 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 then they implode a bit, and then they pop out. And I found that fascinating. If you look at that scene, or those scenes frame by frame, you see how exaggerated it is, and it looks fabulous. It works so well, but it's all about anticipation and release of energy. So the anticipation is whizzing around, and then the sort of gradually smallening of things before they then release the energy, and then they are whoosh, they are now human, and they're still whizzing around a bit. So this is the energy, and I might do a sort of a kind of an imploding bit here. I might sort of alter these a bit so that this set of frames is the extreme out, and then we're back to normal at this point. So this is the extreme out. Now what I'm going to do is just try and get that set of wings and that set of wings out quite a lot, and that gives the impression of a sort of pop. And I think as well, if I shrink the eyes, if you get a small eye, you do get much more of a sense of alert energy from the whole thing. You know, there's much more of an intensity. And I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to move the hat out. Has that? No, okay. What I'll do, because I want to stretch that hat out, I'm just going to rotate, and then I can do that. And then I think that's it. And then the same thing with the legs. So it's a sense of it just going pwang, and then we're back to normal again. So bing bong. Now, so as a crude idea, you've gone ping, pop. See what I mean? I mean, even the only thing I think now isn't particularly working is the mouth. So what I will do, just for this one frame, I could either put a deformer on here, or what I am going to do is just deform the drawing. So I'm going to create a new drawing, take the existing imagery, just those bits, and I'm just going to pull them over. That's rather annoying. Oh, hang on. That's it. So I was doing the wrong images. And I'm going to try and get that sense of it sort of elasticating out. There we go. I'll just try and get that bit down there. Oh, why am I seeing them again? Ugh. There we go. Just wanted to hide all those little annoying dots. Right. Now, I still think that there needs to be a bit more coming out. So, oops. So what I'm going to do, just for this frame, this is the reason why I made a full keyframe of this, because I'm moving all sorts of things which I don't normally move. Just going to select those dots again, and I'm going to, using the translate tool or transform tool, no, I think it's translate, just going to pull these out a little bit so that I've got some, oh, hang on, I'm doing it on the wrong frame. Damn it, I hate it when I do that. There we go, just go back. Right, it's this frame I want to do it on. That one there. That one there. That one there. And that one there. Just a sense of it being bigger. See what I mean? And I might need to make these go up a bit as well. Come on. There we go. Just a real sense of it being a bigger thing and then popping back into sort of to normality, if you like. So now I've got him there. Let's just have a look. Ping, bop. And I think to make this work, because that's the last frame, at this point I'm going to have to try and, this is the grey bird, I'm just going to try and shrink this in this way. And then embiggen it there, and then that's it. And now let's see what happens. There's a sense of him getting smaller so that the matter is compressing and then eventually released. In fact, I might try it a few more frames. And just do it a bit there and a bit there. There we go. Pang. Now then, I'm wondering if that's pop. I'm wondering if that's enough. I like the beginning bit, that's fine. Let me just get rid of them again. Pop. Let me just turn all these off as well. Pop. Pop. Bang. Now, I wonder if, this is experimentation time, I'm going to keep this frame which I like, and I'm just going to move it over, or rather I'm going to copy it and paste it there. Now this frame, I think I want them to go in a little bit, as if it's like bing, boing, and then settle. So I'm just going to take that, and I need to shrink him, so the only way I can do that is with these. Oops. So far, he's been wonderfully useful in how I want to manipulate him. One of the good things about this character is quite simple. I've said this many times before, but I will say it again. Simple characters in programs such as this make for better animation because you're not constrained by too much reality. You know what I mean? The more reality you put in things, folds of fat, realistic perspective and all that sort of stuff, the longer something will take and the more advanced you have to make the puppet in order for it to do essentially the same thing as a simpler design. You know, I'm not saying don't do it, therefore make simple characters, but I am saying it has its advantages. You know, there's a reason why a lot of characters these days are simple looking, Rick and Morty being a very good example. It's because you can do more with them. And they go to town with other aspects of their productions, like, I mean, I don't think it would be so easy to do these large set pieces in Rick and Morty, because they have suddenly a whole world falling apart, or, you know, masses of crowds of people, if the people weren't fairly simple, or the animation wasn't fairly simple, you know what I mean? I mean, occasionally it really dines out on some excellent animation. The Pickle Rick episode is still incredibly well done. I mean, the movement in some of those sequences is extraordinarily good. So I'm not saying for 1 minute it's a crude show, because it ain't. But the characters, the main set, are very crude, and I think that's a good thing for a show like that. It allows it to work better. I think I had a conversation with you know, don't quote me, but I think I had a conversation like this with Harry Partridge, and I think it was sort of went along the lines of, I mean, his stuff's gorgeous. I mean, we all know that. But in a way, a downside of it is that the characters are so detailed, it makes that sort of stuff harder to produce. You know, he's forever looking for a way to make that easier, because they are so elaborate. If the characters look like Rick and Morty, he could have made, you know, God knows how many episodes by now. But it's not that show. I mean, would you get the same viewership if it did look like Rick and Morty? Yes and no. I mean, he wouldn't be happy. You know, it's his vision, and I get it totally. I mean, there are certain things where you think, well, this doesn't work, you know, if it looks a certain way or whatever. If Wallace and Gromit looked like Adventure Time, it wouldn't have the charm, would it? So it's a silly thing to say, oh, well, if you just make it cruder, then. Let's see how that looks. Oh, that's not bad. Boing. Now, is the timing of that correct? That's better. Sometimes after a really exaggerated bit, it's good to give the animation a bit of heft by doing twos. Twos are heavy frames. Most Aardman stuff is on twos. It has a weight to it. It makes the plasticine heavy feeling with it, and also on the, you know, on a naughty note, it also makes it faster to produce. But but no, it's a real thing. It's a heavier thing, and to make ones look heavy requires an awful lot of work, and I very rarely find that it does. Most of the time, ones always look light and looks more balletic, and it suits characters that are dainty, like Nightmare Before Christmas characters. They always look dainty and delicate, and however heavy you try to make things look, it never quite manages it. Whereas if you animate it on two, suddenly it looks heavy, and it suits certain productions, you know. Now, I'm just gonna rotate that a little bit and go up a bit. Now, what we're trying to do now is, for the next few frames, giving a sense of air to the last frame, sort of pop, pop, ha, 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 as if the stars and the feathers and everything else of it are gently coming out. You know, the main energy has been spent, and we're now sort of wallowing a bit. Now, the trick is here to stop it looking so stiff. And with a jelly-like character like this, hopefully that shouldn't be too difficult, but nevertheless, if you're not careful, that's what happens. See how, you know, dead his face potentially will look if I don't give it a bit of energy somewhere else. And I need to sort of make the eyes a bit bigger, you know what I mean? You need to give it a bit more of a sense of life overall, and it has to follow a certain curve. Let me just move that over. Sometimes for these movements, see, that suddenly stops there, so I might go into the previous frame and just calm it down so there's more of a gentle movement from this line to that line, little things like that. But I can't remember what I was trying to say there. It's always looking for curves. That hat now must come up a little bit. Otherwise it starts to look weird. And I'll need to move, I'll need to move that a little bit. Move that down a bit maybe. That's it. One of the advantages of digital work is that you can go backwards and forwards to refine previous frames. Can't do that in stop motion, you just got to keep going forwards. The only thing you can do in stop-mo is two things: plan, and block shots God knows how many times until you're happy. And the other thing you can do is sort of not animate the shot. If you look at old pieces of stop-motion animation, even something as, you know, heralded as Ray Harryhausen stuff, there is a difference in the way it moves to the way it moves now. And there's a reason for that. The technology isn't there. It's as simple as that. The technology isn't there, so the animator has to rely on certain set paths in order to ensure an attractive look that is different to a look that you can get now, where characters don't really look so clockwork anymore. If you look at animation back in the day, stop motion work, it always had a clockwork look to it. Sort of things, they didn't move quite in the same delicate unison as they are supposed to do and they can do now. Or 2D animation, you know, 2D's never had that problem because of the way that that's created. You know, on paper you can review, revise, go backwards and forwards and all this. Whereas stop motion, and you can see, you can flick the pages and kind of get an idea, then you can film it and blah, 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 blah. Stop motion, you can't do that. So you've got to reliably come up with set, tried and true movements. And unfortunately, the price you pay is that the animation looks a little bit clockwork. It's as simple as that. It doesn't matter how good you're an animator you are, they always look that way. If Ray Harryhausen had the technology that we had today, his work would look different. I know it would. I mean, it's an excellent... I mean, the work that he produced with the crude equipment of the time is astonishing. I mean, you just cannot believe just how well he did it. But even with all of that, it has a sort of look of its time. And that's not his fault. It's the technology, you know. It's called animating blind. So you literally don't know what the previous frame you took. You see how I'm doing here, where I'm sort of flicking between the shots and getting an idea of how curves are and how I can see how the energy from one body part is moving. He wouldn't have that. He'd have a guess. He'd sort of make notes and say, okay, we're on a fast bit now. So and he'd have a frame gauge to know where the arm was or something. So he'd put that in. But once it's out of the way, it's a guess. He is guessing. And sometimes, unfortunately, as a human being, he would guess incorrectly. You know, that's why you get these funny little jolts and jumps and things. You know, it's not possible to do Leica level quality animation with that kind of equipment. It simply isn't. I mean, it's astonishing what he managed without it. I think it's very good practice for all animators to try and animate blind, and a lot of people aren't doing it now. There's too much technology, too much of a rush, but you learn an awful lot when you're animating blind about taking chances, about extempore movement, and generally as a consequence your animation gets faster because you're no longer beholden to worrying about where things are going to be. You realise just how slightly unnecessary it all is, you know. I mean, as for this obsession with onion skinning that seems to happen because people don't really understand how animation actually works, frustrates the heck out of me, because it's not something you do. You don't rely on onion skinning at all. Very, very occasionally do you use it. Even in 2D animation, you don't really use onion skinning much, not at the beginning anyway. You use it at the end when you're starting to refine and the line work and the finer points, but the movement, it actually gets in the way of your brain being able to figure out how movement works. You flip the pages, that's how you know how the movement works. Or if you've got a, you know, thing advanced like this, you just play it back like I'm doing now to see how the movement is. You do not put the flipping onion skin on. It has no function there. I think I can count on one hand the amount of times I've used onion skin on this program ever, let alone, you know, this week or this year or whatever. With stop motion, it's the same thing. The only time I really use it is if, you know, I'm continuing a shot overnight and I need to see, you know, a bit of set pop. So that would be if there's a temperature drop, because there often is overnight, and the metal set would bulge or sag or whatever it is, and then you've got to try and sort of, by nudging the set up, by pop props or whatever, trying to get the entire set to kind of be in the same position that it was the previous night. You know, that's pretty much the only time you use it, or if you've accidentally knocked the puppet or something like that. And even then, sometimes I would just put it on a sort of flick flack, an automatic flick flack, and then just move the character. So I don't think, you know, I think a lot of people get very confused with what onion skin is actually for, and it annoys me. And it annoys me because it holds potentially good animators back, because that's what they think animation is supposed to be, and it ain't. It sounds like one of those sort of technical things that one does, and it's just silly. Now the one thing I don't do enough of is keep a hold. What holds are very good for in animation is stored energy. It gives the impression of stored energy, and I, to this day, sometimes don't do it enough, and I have to delete frames and go back and hold a frame. As I mentioned in a previous video, there's an animator called Dan Alderson, and he was always expert in holding a character for I always thought, quite a strong amount of time. It's quite bold with it, and then he would go on to the next frame, and it was all that stored potential energy. It would bounce into the next movement. It'd do it really well, and you know, now I need to get that mark. Oh, that's what I was trying to say. Sometimes I use the computer to go from one frame to another, because the computer can do that, you know, the subtleties of movement much better than a human being can. I mean, a human can do it, but it takes a lot. It takes a long time, and it's often a waste of time, you know, when the computer can do it for you. Obviously, you can't do that with stop motion, so you have to just get on with it. But nevertheless, there are little fiddling tricks in stop motion that you can do. You can brush your finger against a piece of fabric to give it a little bit of a nudge of life, things like that. But these little micro movements, you know. Now, I think this, when he's going down, that's sort of when the movements sort of run out of energy, and it's starting to, you know what I mean? Really, it's like a bouncing ball. We're in the higher point, and now we start to come down again. I would like at some point to do some sort of animation course just to how to animate, and one of the things I would like to try and avoid is a bouncing ball. Not because I don't think that what there is to learn about a bouncing ball isn't valid, because it's very valid, it comes up all the time. But I think sometimes, especially animators that have been starting to do all that sort of stuff, can get a bit blasé about a bouncing ball and think that, you know, that's all the test is about, a bouncing ball. They can, or they get a bit confused and think that that's, you know, I mean, there's so many different ways that a bouncing ball can be. a little dull, to tell you the truth. It's like the flat sack of flour test as well. It's a little bit like that. That's also a little bit annoying. I'd prefer to come up with something that's a bit more engaging and fun that essentially is the same lesson. But pop. Now I'm going to give myself one frame. Pop. And now I'm going to start flapping the bird as he comes down so that he's got some energy. I wasn't sure if I was going to use these sliders, and I'm not. There's something about doing it that way that I feel as if I have more direct control over, which I quite like. I'm going to wrap up this animation in a mo, this video in a mo, because I've got other things to do today. But I do like constraints a lot. They allow me to have this sort of potential energy in so many areas of the puppet, and it's something that I didn't know how they worked when I was first animating, so my characters were very stiff, and had I just put a few constraints in there, it would have loosened it up quite a lot. Because, you know, I like to think I was a decent enough animator when I was first starting out with this this equipment, but I just didn't know about that. I didn't know about how it worked and all that sort of stuff. And constraints, in many respects, more than deformers, really do give it a bit of that essence of life that deformers are a bit obvious. It's constraints that give it that extra energy. I mean, that's something you don't get in stop motion as well. You don't get a lot of characters that are gelatinous, you know what I mean? I don't mean necessarily that they're made of gelatin. I mean that they have that wobble in them. Leica get around it by 3D printing loads of sort of bendy, squashy faces. So you've got all of that because you've been animating it in Maya prior to this, and then you print all the bits and pieces out. With Aardman, if you ever have it, you're getting it through plasticine and sort of sculpting the bits and pieces into whatever sort of squishy shape they are and carving things out, which takes time, but at least you've got that sense of elasticity to them. But even when you don't have that, if you've got a decent puppet maker, they will build all sorts of funny little things into the puppet which isn't obvious, that allows things to extend and distend to just give it that extra relaxed maneuverability, particularly in the shoulders. That's something that's not obvious to a lot of people, and you know, it really does make a character a lot more enjoyable to look at, basically. And of course, if you're going, you know, really going for it, I mean, if you look at characters in Toy Story and you look at characters in Inside Out, or Inside Out 2, or any of the more recent ones. I'm talking about the original Toy Story versus, you know, the stuff that's being made now. There wasn't an awful lot of constraint-based movement in those. You can tell that every character is quite solid. Luckily, the characters being toys, I mean, that was one of the reasons why they chose it, benefit from that, but the human beings don't. They still look sort of marionette-like. One of the things that saves it a bit is motion blur. They're able to give motion blur, which stop motion characters can't often do. That has to be added in post afterwards. So, you know, but there is a difference. I think The Incredibles was the first time, because they were doing full-on stylized humans, and they were able to do, by that stage, fully squishy, squashy mouths and faces and distending and everything. They'd gotten to a plateau then, which they've only just improved upon after that, you know. But I think that's a real difference in a good piece of animation and a great piece of animation, is how squashy and stretchy it is. It always benefits, and a good animator, even in a realistic character like the Beast or whatever it might be, there will be. In fact, Glenn Keane does it all the time. My God, I mean, his stuff is the squishiest, squashiest of the lot. See about that tie. Ugh. What I'm going to have to do with that tie is, I'm not going to bother with it now. But I am going to, who knows what crazy thing's going on with it. But I am going to probably get rid of that nonsense and just hand animate it afterwards, because it's only a secondary movement anyway. So I'm not too worried at this stage. There we go. Now, now which way is it? That one or that one? No. There are only 3 main controls with this. I'm going to start closing his mouth up and closing. Go for a blink. Now, I think because we're starting to get a fast movement, I'd like to do that on ones now. So again, ignoring that silly tie, I'm going to move the wing up and move that round, close the beak, go for a blink down, you can sort of see where this is going, can't you? I mean, bing. Now I want that to come down a little bit further, because what I want is, if you see them all there, pop, I want him to go down and out. So there's going to be quite a lot of energy down before it goes out. So that needs to come down perhaps a little bit more, that flipping tie. There we go. The bigger movements are always much more fun, much faster. I've often said that if you and this is the frustrating thing, you always as an animator get praised for the shots that are not the most difficult. The most difficult shots are the subtle ones. It's, you know, in Inside Out, it's Joy realizing that sadness made things better, or that the beast has feelings for Belle, or something like that. It is not the scene where the beast is running along and is kicking the wolves out of the way. Tricky as that is, I know, but it's not those scenes that are the difficult ones. In fact, they're the more fun ones, because a lot more energy and dynamism, and they look great. But the difficult ones are the subtle ones where he hardly moves at all. That takes ages to do, and nobody cares. It's like, oh, that's all very well. Yeah, well done. That should be the Oscar-winning shot, but it never is. The one that always goes on the show reel is the one where people are running around, dancing, singing. They're doing these big, big operatic movements. You know, I mean, the joy, the best, the most fun character, one of the most fun in recent years, of course, modern times, is the genie from Aladdin, because he's just got so much boundless energy there. How many shots has he got that are deep and meaningful? Hardly any. Most of the time it's just sort of showing off all the time, and it's a delight, and we all love it. The bits where he's saying, I'm free at the end, I mean, it chokes you up. I mean, it's a testament to the quality of the writing and the acting and all this sort of stuff. Is it something that you would herald as a fantastic piece of animation? Probably not. It's not in the forefront of your mind, but it should be. That stuff is hard to do. You know, it's one of those things, you know. And it was always those flippage shots that, you know, you spend hours and hours and days over, and people say, yeah, that's nice, on to the next one. You think, ah! Whereas when you do like 10 singing camels and, you know, a couple of trucks that are doing the Charleston, and everyone goes, oh, that's marvellous. And you think, it's fun. I'd like more of those, but it wasn't particularly difficult, you know. Oh, okay, so I've got to make him blink at that point. Right, now, I'm thinking that's moving a bit too much. Let me just duck that down. Pop. That's not bad. Not bad at all. I'm just going to do a few more frames. I don't want to... I've got other things to do in a minute, so I'm just going to try and wrap this up. But you can see where this is going, can't you? I mean, it's just... I should keep those eyes blinked longer. Roll those down. At this point, he's flapping quite happily there. He needs to come over. Look at that tie, honestly. I knew it wouldn't work right. I might fiddle around with its settings to see if I can get it working and all right in the end. After all, I think there's something. Pardon me. There's something that's not quite right about its settings. You know, I've never managed to make it work right. All the times that I've done it. I need to flip this. Can it flip? Good. Okay. Sometimes with these constraints and everything, I never know whether I can actually flip a body part in the usual way or not. Right. Pop. I would like that to come down more. And he needs to do that, because I really do want a lot more energy to come down. Yeah, that's fine. There we go. Up. I think we're okay. Let's just go with that. I'm sorry I went a bit quiet there. I'm to actually think. There's another guy that does tutorials for Nomad, and he seems to have narrated his stuff after he actually did it. And I do wonder sometimes if I should do that for animation, because first of all, I get a lot more animation done, and secondly, I think it would just make the learning process a little bit easier, because I'm not having to sort of make not very good animation because I'm being distracted. Now that bulge there, not keen, so I'm going to have to, this is one of the things that I'm going to have to compromise on, otherwise I'm going to end up making an ugly puppet. And then I need to bend his head round like that. Up, shall we say? More. There we go, oops. And his pupils come up more. And I think I need to move him a little bit further over. And then start going up. Down with that, down with that. One thing that I perhaps could have built into him is just one control for the flap, so that way both of them move at the same time. I mean, every time you build something like that in, you've got to counter it with something else. So if he was flying literally all the time and had loads of shots, then that would actually be beneficial and I would do it. But, you know, come on, I've got one more shot with him. Is it really that much of a hardship for me to do it twice? I have seen people where they rig both eyes to move around, which is nice, but then what if you want to do something like that occasionally, or that, you know what I mean? Because you might, you know, or something, you know, off. You'd have to build in another sort of pathway in the node view to allow for that, you know. Now, I'm still not sure whether I'm down enough, so I might need to lower some of that. Sorry about the helicopter, or I think that's helicopter, if you can hear it. There we go. I think that'll do for now. You can kind of see where I'm going with this shot anyway. When I finish it, there'll be a few little things, and of course all 3 birds will be flying off, so I'll have to make some variations there. You know, so it's going to take a little while to do. Let's have a look and see where we've gone so far. So I'll just turn his controls off. Pop, 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 pop. So there you go. That's the animation so far, and he's going to fly off screen and then go into the next one. The last shot, there's an awful lot going on, so that's going to take me quite some time. There's a lot of activity there. Hopefully I can use a little bit of reuse from previous shots, because it's pretty much just the kind of the entire cast faffing about. So that's going to take some time. And it's got to settle and everything, so we'll see. Yeah. I hope you've enjoyed this little perambulation and waffle, but yeah, I'm quite pleased. Apart from that flipping tie, I'm quite pleased with how it's gone. I'll fiddle around with the tie and see how it works. Anyway, love you all lots. Hope you're having a lovely time, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.